Go. Shalom Aleichem, everybody, and welcome to Machan Le'Ra Online Smicha. As we chip away to learn more and more about the halachas of Pesach, so I want to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of what are the different types of matzah. Now, I have already a class, and he'll share it to you. When choosing matzah, what's the preferable type of matzah? What do you have to know? Why a matzah is so expensive? But that's not the topic I want to cover then. I actually went and listened to that whole class because over there I dodged the bullet. In that class, I didn't discuss in detail machine matzah versus handmade shmura matzah. You know that machine matzah. Let's start off with a premise. Let's start off with a foundation. Everything is kosher, as long as it's done properly and it got into the oven. I mean, the ingredients is only flour and water, and it got into the oven before it had a chance to rise. Whether it was machine or it was handmade, it's kosher. However, there's one extreme opinion that Divrei Chaim of Tzanz held that for some reasons, as we're going to discuss, he held very much against machine-made matzah. He says we're going to discuss what the issues are. So the consensus are like this: we have a large group of people. I would say a big part of Klal Yisrael relies on the machine-made matzah. There are those, the other extreme, will not touch machine-made matzah on Pesach. They'll only eat handmade matzah. And then there are some who are like right in the middle. For the Seder, they'll only eat handmade shmura matzah. But the rest of Pesach, you're not allowed to eat chametz. The rest of Pesach, when they're eating matzah, they'll eat machine-made matzah. Now, again, in this year, I'm not going to discuss the concept of shmura. What does shmura mean? Shmura means it was watched, guarded, to make sure no issues of chametz. In this short year, we're just going to discuss what is the pro and what is the con of hand versus machine-made matzah as it's discussed in the Svarim. Obviously, we understand that 200 years ago there was no such a thing as machine-made matzah. I don't know when it started, the whole machine-made matzah. When the machine started working. So this is something new in Yiddishkeit. So there are those who actually say, listen, it's difficult enough to make sure that you stay away from chametz, even without new gimmicks. Just chametz is all around your house, all year round, and to make sure there is no crumb of chametz, it's difficult. So what did the Jews do for thousands of years until the machines came along? The Jews did what they did, and based on that, they felt confident there was no chametz. So when the new things come, we don't know. It's hard enough to feel comfortable that you got rid of every single crumb. So just do what it used to be, how it used to be done. Now, obviously, that answer doesn't satisfy many people, because if it gets better, it's all about upgrading. And if there's any possibility that machine matzah might even be better, why shouldn't we do it that way? So let me tell you the good. And in other words, let's use it. We have a couple of lawyers in this class. Let's say the claim and let's do the defense. Let's do the both sides of the coin. One opinion comes along and says a very practical reason why handmade matzah is better. Because by handmade matzah, you're not talking to a machine, and a machine is put together from many parts, and it's important. The hand that rolls the matzah, or the people that bake the matzah, whatever it is, they can wash their hands. They could see if any dough left in the hands, and you could always make sure that you're cleaning yourself in such a way that there's no chametz. So all the hands on board, everybody who's involved in the matzah could clearly verify that they're clean, there's no chametz. By a machine, because it's so many small moving parts, I don't know if you could guarantee it that it's that a brekela chametz, a crumb of chametz is not there. That's one problem. That the response to this is, excuse me, what's going to be what's making what would be chametz in your hand? What would be chametz in anybody dealing with the matzah? What would be chametz is you're holding the dough, and the dough has to get into the oven by 16, 17, 18 minutes. It has to be in the oven. If you didn't put it in fast enough, then the leftover dough will rise. That's an issue only when you're dealing with hands. When you're dealing with machines, zip, it's getting into the oven much, much faster. So it's not the possibility of finding dough rising in the machines is not there. So what you're looking to make sure that everything is clean is not an issue when you're dealing with machines, because machines, the less possibility that it even could become chametz. That is one issue. The next issue is a big one. What's the how do you know if the person's making matzah or he's making crackers, making tam-tams? Maybe he's just making matzah. Maybe he's just making a cracker. So there is a specific halacha that says that when all those involved in the making of the matzah have to make it with the presence of mind that I'm doing this process, this kneading, this baking, this rolling. They have to have in mind, and we actually say it. M'shei matzah's mitzvah. We're doing this for the mitzvah of matzah. Now, that a human could do that. A machine has no seichel, so you can't see that it's being done for the purpose of matzah. So that's one problem. The defense comes back and says, excuse me, the machine has to think? The man pressing the buttons on the machine. The machine doesn't happen automatic. There's somebody monitoring the machine. The one monitoring the machine will have a mind, or even say, I'm doing this l'shem matzah's mitzvah. So that's not a big problem. Especially this lishma, this concept that the matzah has to be made lishma, is not necessarily in the baking process. It's not necessarily in the baking process. It means the whole makeup of making sure the matzah is done well should be lishma. I don't know that the actual baking has to be the lishma. So you tried, you gave me a pushback by saying I don't have a machine thinking lishma. I don't know what it has to be. The next problem with the machine matzah is maybe a drop of dough or a piece of wheat, a little flour is stuck somewhere, and it will ruin the matzah. Where is it stuck? The previous thing we said it was stuck in the machine. Now we're saying that when the machine kneads the dough, mixes the dough, rolls the dough, when the person is doing it, when a man is doing it, when a man or a woman is rolling the dough, they see what the dough looks like. They can make sure that every part of the dough is actually kneaded properly. But when it comes to a machine, all we need is one kernel not being kneaded properly, one part of the matzah rising, and that ruins it all. Maybe by a machine that you don't have that supervision to see that one little corner. The response to that claim is, excuse me, that is such a far-fetched problem, because the machine does things very well, and the machine gets it into the oven fast. The next problem that they bring up is, okay, sooner or later we won't need people around. The whole thing of the handmade shmura matzah is that people should be involved in doing the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to make matzah. I don't need robots. I want the people to do the matzah. And the response to that is, the machine still has to be supervised. the machine still has to be with people around. So a person who wants to have a kosher matzah, a fast matzah in the oven, which is less chance that it becomes chametz, go supervise, go press the buttons, you'll still be involved. And believe it or not, last but not least is the funniest answer. The reason why we insist to have handmade shmura matzah is because many people get a parnasa from it. A machine matzah, how many people work in the factory? Once you build up the machine, you need a couple people to clap buttons. But because in the handmade shmira matzah, handmade shmura matzah, you need a lot of people kneading and rolling. I hope you guys have seen what it looks like in a matzah bakery. So that's also good for the system that a lot of Yidden are involved in the baking of the matzah. The flip side to that is, when you're doing things handmade, the amount of coming out, how much comes out, is much less. When you do machine-made matzah, you could do so much more, and the machine-made shmura matzah, you don't have to bake the matzah 9 months in advance. You have fresher matzah when you bake it within the 30 days, and that could only, if you need a large amount, that could only be with the machine. So these are the two sides of the coin. And to summarize it, many, I would say majority of people, at least for the Seder, they're makpid to have handmade shmura matzah. Now, and my other video, I speak about if it's round, the other items that you have to be sure when you're buying matzah. But for the Seder, you try to have handmade shmura matzah. The rest of the week, the rest of the Pesach, there are those that still only eat handmade shmura matzah the rest of Pesach. Others allow themselves to eat machine made for the rest of the week.